earlier this year, and actually at the back end of last year, a question was being asked of some financial planners: do you think we'll have a wealth tax? And then we had the Wealth Tax Commission report in December last year, which suggested if we are to have a wealth tax, this is how a one-off wealth tax, because the case for a regular annual wealth tax has largely been shot, proven to have been very difficult in the countries in which it was implemented. So will that question be raised again as we start to think again, coming up to the next budget, around the need to repair public finances? If the economy looks like it's recovering properly, which right now it does seem like it is, we've got further relaxations to be announced by the time you see this video. They might have already been announced. Are things in a good place economically? Possibly yes. Better maybe than we could have expected them to be. Are interest rates still low? Possibly yes. Do we need to do anything then to repair public finances? Absolutely we do. So would a wealth tax be one way of doing that? Well, it would harm the economy. There's no doubt it would take money out of the economy, and it definitely seems, so I'm going over old ground here, that this isn't something that a Conservative government, and certainly not this Prime Minister or this Chancellor, is in favour of. But what could happen, many believe, is a more wide-ranging review of the current system of capital taxation. The OTS, the Office of Tax Simplification, have looked at, we know this, we've talked about it quite a bit in the past, have looked at both inheritance tax and capital gains tax. And some believe that both those taxes are long overdue for a review, maybe with the shunning of any form of wealth tax to go, but at least we should review capital taxation in a more rounded sort of way, be a little more radical. The OTS suggestions, recommendations for capital gains tax reform were themselves pretty radical. So just recently, the OECD have suggested that capital taxation around the world needs a bit of a review, and they generally are in favour of a beneficiary-based inheritance tax. The, what else was there? Oh yeah, the Treasury Select Committee only this year have suggested that there is a compelling case, looking at my bit of paper here, a compelling case for the reform of capital taxes, that is both taxes, to reform both, to look at changing those taxes to make a single whole tax that looks at capital taxation generally, wealth transfer and wealth realisation together. You know, one of those areas that has been looked at by the OTS is why is it the case, say them, that when somebody dies, it's not treated as a disposal for capital gains tax? Why does not a capital gains tax liability arise? Or at least when someone inherits an asset, why is it that they start with a fresh base? Is that fair, that all the capital gain for tax purposes gets lost? One of the things that was looked at by the OTS, something that has clearly been picked up on in a more general sense by the Treasury Select Committee, suggesting that compelling case for a reform of capital taxation. And that is definitely an area we will be looking out for, because the political case, you can see, is quite compelling to the government, possibly, if they're going to do something and be seen to be doing something about tax. Remember these facts: capital gains tax generates about £10 billion a year. Inheritance tax generates about £5 billion a year. Here's the important point politically, though. Capital gains tax is paid by about 250,000 individuals, and one half of that 10 billion yield from CGT is paid by 10,000 individuals. So point there, and also inheritance tax, only about 4% of estates are subject to an inheritance tax. So changing those tax systems generally, when you look at the people who are affected, it's not that many. So that compelling case suggested by the Treasury Select Committee might also be seen as compelling by the government. We don't know, that's just me speculating. We will, however, be keeping, as I said, a very close ear to the ground on both of those taxes. So watch out for our ruminations within TechLink.